Okay, so have you ever been in a church and seen a priest hold two crossed burning candles right up to someone's throat? It's this really old tradition, and you know what? It all traces back to one guy and one pretty incredible story. So today, we're going to unravel the whole thing. I mean, it's a pretty striking image, right? Maybe even a little weird. Every year on February 3rd, you see this ritual in churches all over the world. But why? What's the deal with the cross candles and, of all things, the human throat? That's the big mystery we're diving into. So, this whole thing is officially called the Blessing of the Throats. And it's basically a way of asking for protection from sickness, specifically through a saint named Blaise. But to really get why we're using candles for a throat, we've got to go way back to the dramatic legend that started it all. And listen, this isn't just some dusty old tale. We're talking about a super dramatic, last-second rescue. It's this one single miracle that basically shaped how people would remember St. Blaise for, like, the next 1,700 years. No exaggeration. Okay, so this is the key moment right here. Just try to picture this. Blaise is being hauled off to prison, right? He's basically a dead man walking. All of a sudden, this panicked mother just plows through the crowd. Her son is literally choking to death on a fishbone, and right there, in that chaotic moment, Blaise just stops. He prays over the boy, and just like that, the kid is healed. It's this amazing picture of faith shining through even in the darkest of times. And that's it. That's the reason. That one single legendary act is why St. Blaise is the guy you pray to if you've got a sore throat. The connection is just so direct and powerful, you can't miss it. But here's the thing. This miracle, it's just one tiny piece of a much, much bigger story. And to really get St. Blaise, you kind of have to look at two different things at once. On one side, you've got the historical facts, the stuff we're pretty sure actually happened. And on the other, you've got these incredible traditions and legends like the fishbone miracle that popped up over the years. You really need both sides to see the full picture. Okay, so let's put the legends on pause for a second. Who was the actual guy behind all these stories? It's time to peel back those layers and see what history can tell us about the real Bishop of Sebaste. Well, history tells us a few things for sure. Blaise was a real person, not a myth. He was a bishop in a place called Sebaste. That's in modern-day Turkey, way back in the early 300s. And by all accounts, he was a guy who really cared for his people, both their health and their faith. And yeah, we know he got arrested and was eventually martyred for that faith around the year 316. This is the bedrock, the solid foundation that all those other stories are built on. And this quote is so important because it connects the history to the legend. It shows that his reputation as a healer wasn't something people just made up centuries later. Nope. From the beginning, he was known as a physician, a doctor who took care of people's bodies and their souls. So when you hear those healing legends, they don't come out of nowhere. They're a totally natural fit for who this guy really was. Okay, so mystery of the throat connection? Solved. But here's a curveball. St. Blaise is also the patron saint of, wait for it, woolcombers. I know, right? What in the world does a bishop who saved a kid from a fishbone have to do with the wool industry? Well, the answer is actually pretty intense, and it all goes back to how he died. Yeah, this connection doesn't come from a happy healing story. It comes from the absolutely brutal final chapter of his life, his martyrdom. This is where things get really dark, but also show his incredible courage. So the story goes that when Blaise refused to worship pagan idols, his punishment was just awful. They tortured him with these sharp iron combs, the exact same tools that woolcombers used to process wool. They literally tore at his skin with them. It's a horrible thing to think about, but you can see how that would create this permanent, unforgettable link between him and that specific trade. So let's just walk through his final days. He gets arrested. They interrogate him, tell him to give up his faith. He says no, so they torture him with those combs trying to break his spirit. But it doesn't work. He holds strong. And because of that unwavering faith, he's finally executed. That's what makes him a martyr. So you see how it all fits together now? It's actually really straightforward. Each of the things he's known for is tied directly to a major event in his story. He heals the boy with the fishbone, so he's the protector of throats. He's tortured with iron combs, so he's the patron saint of woolcombers. The stories and the reasons we remember him are just perfectly connected. Okay, so we've got the history on one hand and these powerful legends on the other. Which leads to the big question, right? How are we supposed to think about all this? What's real? And does it even matter if a story is historically accurate? Well, here's a really key idea. The church has a term for stories like this: pious traditions. Basically, it means you don't have to believe every single detail is literal word-for-word history. The point isn't the historical accuracy, it's the spiritual lesson inside the story. So the fishbone miracle isn't really about a medical procedure. It's a story that teaches us something about faith and about God's power to intervene. So here's the best way to think about it. You've got St. Blaise, the real person, the bishop and martyr. Fact. Then you've got St. Blaise, the legend, the healer, the guy with the candles and the combs. You can't really separate them. It's the combination of the real man and these powerful stories that's created such a lasting legacy. And that kind of leaves us with a final question to chew on, doesn't it? For people like St. Blaise, the legends about them can sometimes become way more powerful than the historical facts. So it makes you wonder, at what point does the legend actually become the story? And if we try too hard to separate the history from the legend, are we actually missing the whole point?